USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Weekend Review podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. A look at this weekend in college hockey and a review of the top news of the week.
Welcome to USCHO Weekend Review for Monday, March 7th, 2022. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley. This podcast is brought to you by DCU Digital Federal Credit Union. What will DCU mean to you? Find out today by visiting dcu.org. Membership required. Well, how about the final weekend of Hockey East? Certain things all had to fall into place for Northeastern, and they did. Let's start out with UMass. They needed just 1 point versus BC to clinch the league title. I don't think there were that many people out there that thought they wouldn't be able to get at least 1 point. Yet they lost 2-1 on Friday. The tying goal was disallowed as it apparently crossed the goal line just a split second after the buzzer, and then lost at home at Mullins Center 4-3 on Saturday. Never led in that game. They just sort of laid an egg here. They had it right in their hands, destiny controlled by themselves.
I was shocked. I think that, listen, I write a gambling column, and I said to somebody yesterday, Sunday, that if you had taken $10 and picked all 10 games correctly in a parlay, you'd probably have over $10,000 right now, because the odds of BC sweeping that were probably horrible. And just almost all of the outcomes, you can look at almost every series on the weekend, and there was at least one game that you'd say, how did that happen? Where did that come from? And, the whole thing was remarkable, but it does show just how close this league was all season. But, I'm really shocked. I think the one team that now is going to have to pick up the pieces, and I think that they have absolutely the right coach to help them pick up the pieces, that's Greg Carvel's UMass team. They've been in this situation before where they've hit a bump on the road. I go back to the year that they made their first Frozen Four, and they had gotten knocked out in the Hockey East semis by the same team, Boston College. And they bounced back and played a great NCAA regional and then got to the national title game before finally losing. He can get his team back, but wow, it just still, 3 days later, I'm still a little bit shocked by it all.
Yeah, it was a crazy night. And like you said, you bring Greg Carvel up into it. You need to have some sort of, they're not leaking oil. We talked about teams leaking oil last week. They're not leaking oil, but now they've got a little adversity. And sometimes adversity going into playoffs is a good thing. You find out what you're made of. You find out how you respond. They're going to make the tournament, so they're going to have an opportunity to right the ship here. So it's interesting. Don't lose any thoughts over UMass being okay on this. They'll be fine. But then also, how about BC? How about them righting the ship at the right time? Don't forget about that. And Steve Metcalf did have to be in 3 places at once.
Yeah, I did like what he came up with for a solution. He wasn't going to be anywhere because he had a women's championship game to run at the same time. So he figured out ways to have trophies in position to hand out if they needed to be.
So the whole Hockey East plot thickens on Saturday. UMass Lowell swept New Hampshire on the weekend. That put them into a tie with UMass. So the late game, and it was very cool how Hockey East staggered the starts of all the games, probably so Steve Metcalf could get to the right arena, I guess. But a late game, Northeastern and Merrimack, they're tied 0 apiece. Overtime would have given UMass and UMass Lowell a tie and share of the title. And an overtime or a shootout win would make it a 3-way race. But then Aiden McDonough finds himself in the slot, takes a nice pass from the backboards and buries it. 9.6 seconds left on the clock, and Northeastern wins its first ever Hockey East title. What a bunch of pieces all falling together in the right way.
Well, first of all, Steve Metcalf, you said what a cool thing. As a coach, I don't like it. I think all the games should start at the same time. You don't know what's going on. You have an idea of what's going on at other buildings, but you don't know your 100% result. I go back to a game that I played against Mercier way back when we both had to pull our goalie. We both needed a win, and it was a game of chicken to see who would pull their goalie first. I think and we knew the results going into it. And after that, we changed it as an Atlantic Hockey to try to make sure we got as many starts at the same time as possible. So as much as I think Steve's great there and does a great job and a good friend, I think that they need to make sure that because the way you play changes. So they need to make sure that the games all start as close as possible on the last day of the year. That's my editorial opinion. Steve listens, a longtime listener. We might get a phone call on this one, Jimmy.
I think you might, but I also think that TV probably dictated the game start times more than anything on that one. But yeah, you said it, Ed. Here was everybody. The announcers on the Merrimack broadcast are already talking about the fact that Lowell and UMass would have a share of the title. They knew the tiebreakers, that it was going to be, I believe UMass would have taken the 1 seed, BC the 2 seed. I'm sorry, Lowell the 2 seed, and then Northeastern the 3 seed. But then a face-off play, and I'd have to talk to Jerry Keefe about it, but it really did look like Northeastern intentionally lost the draw, put 2 men hard into the corner on the forecheck, and then just said to Aiden McDonough, their best offensive player, their best pure scorer, get into the slot. We'll try to get to the puck. And boy, it worked out. They win a battle in the corner, fire puck right out front, 9.5 seconds left. Puck goes in, and Northeastern gets to celebrate their first league championship in 38 years. Phenomenal for Jerry Keefe, first year head coach, to be able to do that. I mean, everything about it, even though I'm a Lowell grad and I will probably love to see them, get a chance to take another trophy. I love the way the season ended and the drama. We had said it weeks ago. It was a month ago, I think we were talking about the drama that we could have in the final night. And going into the weekend, I didn't think we had a chance for it, and we had it. And it ended up being quite dramatic the way things fell.
Well, another part of the weekend is it was senior night at Maine. First-year head coach Ben Barr ended on a great note as his team beat BU 8-1, but BU needed 1 point to have home ice in the quarterfinals in Hockey East, and they did not achieve that, kind of putting a damper on what has been a great end of the season for BU.
Yeah, and I think that all 3 teams that are kind of built into the middle of the standings had disappointing moments this weekend. Merrimack was there. They started the weekend, I believe, in second place and had a chance to get it, stay into second place. Would have been their highest finish ever in Hockey East. They get swept. They fall all the way down. They're the 6th seed. And UConn, they do get home ice out of it, and I'm sure they're very happy about that. They just knew that it could have been a little bit easier if they didn't lose to Vermont, a team that I think that they went up, they went in there thinking they could beat on Friday night. They did rebound with a really solid win on Saturday. I think they jumped out to a 4-0 lead in that game and never looked back. But still, everybody in that middle of the pack had something that probably left them a little disappointed. So you had, teams like Lowell and Northeastern had great weekends. Teams at the bottom did things that they probably didn't think they were going to accomplish, like Maine, Vermont, BC. The middle all had something that they probably sit back here on a Monday morning and say, wow, wish we took care of business a little differently.
Yeah, disappointing for sure. I mean, I think that really throws into, we're going to talk about the PairWise later, but that really changes some things. That's a disappointing ending to a really good stretch that they've been on. And, like you said, a lot of good things. A lot of teams needed some exciting things to happen going into the playoffs, and it happened all over the country. So from upsets to game 3s, there were a lot of exciting things this weekend. And I just, the next weekends, the things that are going to happen over the next couple of weekends, watch out. If this is any indication of what happened this weekend, we're in for an exciting ride down the stretch towards Boston.
Yeah, we always talk about this being the best time of the year. Maybe the best weekend is league championship weekend, and that's a couple weekends away. NCHC, they had a dramatic finish too. North Dakota won on Friday night. They were close to winning in regulation, but they won in overtime 5-4 on Friday which gave them the 2 points they needed to guarantee a share of the Penrose Cup, the NCHC regular season title. And everybody, including that league, were talking as if North Dakota had won the Penrose Cup outright, and that was it. But Denver still had a path. Denver needed to get 3 points on Saturday and have North Dakota lose. Omaha beat the Fighting Hawks 4-1 on Saturday. DU swept Colorado College in a home-and-home series and got a share of the title. And then on top of all of that, the tiebreaker was interesting. Both teams with 53 points, but the Pioneers got the top playoff seed because they had more regulation wins. It's an unbalanced schedule this year between North Dakota and the Pioneers, and Denver went to North Dakota for 2 and lost those 2. Yet it was Denver that gets the top seed because they had more regulation wins. So that all kind of came together over the last couple of days. What Denver needed to have happened, and Denver took care of business.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a celebration hangover. You give out the trophy and they're carrying it around, and once again, there's no way that this is going to happen. It's it's not going to happen. Blah blah blah. We're going to get a point, and maybe a little bit of a celebratory hangover on that portion. But that being said, the tiebreaker is interesting. We did a lot of research a couple of years ago on our tiebreakers in Atlantic hockey, especially when we went to an unbalanced schedule. And I really we went to league wins first because of this scenario. And the reason that this scenario takes place is because they didn't play 4 times and they play the 2 games in one building. You don't want to handcuff a team that has to go on the road when you only play twice. That could be the difference. In this scenario would have been the difference between a league title because of playing on the road. So I really like this tiebreaker. Yes, they won. They were 2-0, and I see the North Dakota fans going, "Hey, we were 2-0. We should have won the tiebreaker." But everybody knows the tiebreaker is going in. You start looking at the tiebreakers probably about 2-3 weeks ago, just so you know every scenario that happens, just like the media does. And they knew the scenario that it would go to league wins because there was only 2 games played and they were at North Dakota. I
hate it. I detest it. Everybody knows head-to-head is usually the tiebreaker that you use in sports. And yes, the games weren't played in different buildings, and everything was in North Dakota. But I mean, if North Dakota had gone on the road to Denver, played those 2 games and beat them, then you're trying to say that wouldn't be enough to get the tiebreaker. Or it just didn't make sense to me. I've never heard of that one. We had Josh Fenton on our podcast last week, and we talked about great innovations that he's made in his time as commissioner. This might be the one thing that I could pick apart and say, I didn't like this one. And I know it's probably not even on the commissioner, it's more on the coaches, but I don't like the thought of pulling a tiebreaker and making it that oblong, that it's head to head unless you didn't play a certain number of times in the season. It just didn't make any sense to me.
You wouldn't believe the tiebreakers. We researched every time. You wouldn't believe some of the tiebreakers, 3-way ties. It's you. Like literally, you want to go and put your head through a wall after looking at some of this. Go look at every league's tiebreakers. You may hate it, but I can tell you, this is from the same people that go 55-45 on a 3-on-3 win. So if you hate that,
absolutely,
then you see why. Because the coaches propose it. The faculty reps and presidents agree to it, and it goes through, and the ADs agree to it, and but it starts with the coaches. Same reason that we're at 55-45 on 3-on-3 overtime.
And I agree with Derek on this one. When you have an unbalanced schedule, it is difficult to compare head to head. And if you did it, well, it's only head to head if they win on the road. I don't think that would work. By the way, Derek, when Robert Morris is back in Atlantic hockey, you guys need to take a look at those tiebreakers, because like 4th and 5th or 5th and 6th on the list, if one of them doesn't happen, the next one on the list can't happen either. And so that's been that way for several years. That needs to get fixed.
Yeah, but I think we did get rid of one of them because it is goals. It's like a goal differential, and then it goes goals for, goals against, which then would be equal because of it. I mean, there's so many different things. Yeah, you're right. But I really like the record against the top seeds. That's one of my favorite tiebreakers. Your record against the first seed, your record against the second seed. See how you do against the best. That's a really good tiebreaker in my opinion.
The tiebreaker I think we just should always start with is the last one, coin flip.
Yeah, and you don't get the puck after.
I lost. How about this? In college, I lost with my roommate. We had the two of us were the older guys, and we had a younger guy living with us. So it was a 2-bedroom. One of us had to share a room with the other one, and we did rock, paper, scissors 2 out of 3, and I lost. I mean, I had to share a room then for my senior year, but I was up 1-0, and I thought this is great. You never go back to the same one.
And that's what happens. You won the first one and then paraded around the apartment with a Penrose cup, and look what happened. I do want to mention briefly before we go to break, there was one other fun situation in the NCHC, and that was with St. Cloud and Minnesota Duluth. They knew they would be playing each other next weekend, and they didn't know where. The Bulldogs pulled 3 points ahead with a 3-2 overtime win on Friday and needed at least one more point to stay in 4th place in the league. But David Rennick's third shutout of the season led to a 2-0 win and a tie in the standings. And the only regulation win was for St. Cloud State in that game. And since they had the regulation win, they won the tiebreaker, and the whole thing goes to St. Cloud. And we've seen St. Cloud during the season kind of looking up at the standings. They went through a murderer's row early in the season. This is a nice way for them to end the regular season in 4th place and getting home ice.
Maybe the most dangerous team that's out there right now. If they can get through the quarterfinals, then they get a single game against potentially Denver. You win that game, you maybe win your league championship, or maybe you don't, but you've put yourself in the NCAA tournament and you're playing good hockey going into it. And that we saw how St. Cloud performed last year, getting through Boston University, Boston College in the regionals, and then Minnesota Duluth and national semifinal. I mean, this, to me, I look at this and sit there and say, this is a dangerous team. There's a lot of dangerous teams out there. And I never, once the field is announced in a couple of weeks, I know we'll kind of go through where the potential dark horses are and stuff like that. But I look at just this point in the season, St. Cloud State would scare me, as much as any team, maybe more than most. Yeah, absolutely. You're getting good goaltending. You're getting an experienced team, a team that went through what they did last year at the Frozen Four, murderer's row of a schedule. Yes. Really good thing that came out of it, though, too, is that Minnesota Duluth, there's no way they can finish under 500, which takes that 500 record better record off the table for the NCAA tournament. So that's, in my opinion, that would have, with what they've been through, their schedule they've played, that would have been a shame if they would have got to that point where they could have not made the tournament because their record was under 500. Well,
with that, we'll take a break, and we're going to be talking about the first round of the playoffs this last weekend, and also what things look like in the PairWise when Weekend Review continues. We're sponsored by DCU Digital Federal Credit Union. Visit dcu.org.
This is the USCHO Weekend Review podcast from US College Hockey Online.
Sometimes it's not about wanting a new car, it's about needing one. And I needed one I could rely on. So I got an auto loan with DCU. They offer the same low rates on both new and used cars, and I was able to borrow a little extra to make a used car as good as new. My auto loan from DCU means a ride I can finally rely on, which feels like a pretty big thing. What will DCU mean to you? Insured by NCUA. Membership required. Visit dcu.org.
Welcome back to Weekend Review. Let's take a look at the first round of playoffs. Penn State got the big upset. It was 3 one-goal games. They won games 2 and 3. They lost on Friday 4-3, but put up 52 shots on goal. They put up 46 shots on Saturday's game too. They just really showed what Guy Gadowski's teams are about, that they can just put a lot of offense on you.
Did that surprise you? I don't think anybody would have said that, oh my God, they got 50 shots. I mean, that's what they do. And it always keeps you on your toes. You always have to play well away from the puck. You always have to make sure that you don't turn and puck watch, because they're going to put one off the pads and there's a rebound. I know we didn't pick any upsets or anything or anything like that, but this would have been one with Ohio State leaking oil a little bit. And we talked about that, that this might've been one that if we had really done a deep dive, that we could have came up with a potential here. I mean, there was no way that Michigan State was going to beat Michigan. Michigan State hasn't won a playoff game in the Big Ten ever. So, and that includes first rounds. They haven't won a playoff game. So that wouldn't have been our upset. But if you go and you look at this could have been one of those that you would have been really questioning it on your gambling site, Jimmy, if you would have picked this.
Yeah, I think if I had to identify one series that I thought that could be an issue, it would have been this one. You mentioned that Ohio State wasn't playing its best hockey. They'd had some time off, which was good, but I think that they've now lost 6 of their last 7 games heading in, and now they're going to have to sit and wait and see what happens the rest of the way. You said it all, Derek. You play Penn State, and you need to have your shot blocking boots on, because shots are coming from everywhere. The popcorn stand, the hot dog stand, the penalty box. I think they still find ways to get shots from the penalty box. I mean, it's unbelievable what Penn State can do to throw some offense at you. And as you said, they work so hard oftentimes just to find rebounds and find opportunities. But, I looked at the game-winning goal last night, a beautiful cross-seam pass, one-timer in the net, and I think Ohio State looked shocked. You win that first game, you probably feel like you're in good shape. You're taking care of business, you're at home, and that's what Penn State can do. I think that they're a very dangerous team. In Minnesota, in a single game series, they could have their hands full. I do think that Minnesota defensively probably has a little better structure, and I think will make it a little bit more difficult to get 50 shots for Penn State. But I wouldn't put it past Guy Gadowski's team to be able to do it. They know how to generate offense.
In another first round playoff in the Big Ten that went 3 games, number 7 Notre Dame prevailed over Wisconsin, but this was a good weekend, at least for the Badgers, to show what they're made of. It was a 3-1 win for Wisconsin on Friday. Then on Saturday, Notre Dame went up 2-0. The Badgers came back to tie it in the second on a couple power play goals, but then Notre Dame scored the game winner with 20 seconds left. And then last night, the 4-2 victory was an empty netter late. Maybe not a great season for Wisconsin, but maybe an up note for the Badgers to close out on.
There's no doubt about that. This was not the season that Tony Granato and his staff imagined coming off, the high of last season and having guys like Cole Caulfield in your lineup. And listen, you lose players that good, it's hard to rebuild immediately, but I do believe Wisconsin can get back. I don't really believe in momentum and stepping stones when they go over a season. So I don't know that this weekend can necessarily say too much about next year, but at least going into an off season, these players can feel a little bit more confident that, the core of the team that returns has some potential. Now they've got to go and build on that core. They've, I think that, hopefully a good recruiting class, maybe there's some transfers out there that fit the profile of that program. But I think that, it was a good weekend of hockey. They would have liked to have gotten that third game. And when you win game 1, it's always hard to close things out on the road. And knowing that you lose that second game late, I'm sure you just want to get to overtime and then hope for a bounce. But it goes the other way. You give up a really late goal, and then that you're kind of sitting on the wrong side of the momentum train. Notre Dame was fast out of the gate yesterday, a 2-0 lead early, but I just thought that when push came to shove, I was impressed with Notre Dame, their resolve, finding a way to finish those 2 games. Yeah,
it's a tough season for Wisconsin to go from the number one seed they had last year, or I think there were 4, there were 5. They were in that area. They got Bemidji and things went downhill. And then to have a 10-win season, 10-24, I don't really think you could carry anything from the season over to next. I think the coaches are going to go in and say, let's put this out of our mind. And we've got to be better. The pride in this program, the pride in the Badger logo, and that just know that that's not good enough, and use that as a fuel that way. You're not going to look back at this win and go, this is putting us in the right direction. You're going to look at this and go, we're going to use this as fuel to be better.
In the CCHA, there was maybe a little bit of a scare during the game as St. Thomas was up 2-1 over Minnesota State. And also in that game, I saw a clip. There was some vintage Rico Blasi behind the St. Thomas bench, maybe channeling a little bit of his mentor, George Gwozdecki, as he was calling out the referees on what he thought was a missed call. But Minnesota State took care of business, came back 3-2, and then an 8-2 win on Saturday.
You stole my line there. The only thing you didn't do was stand up on the boards and walk across the ice. And George was so well dressed. I don't know how he climbed over the boards in that. But I thought when you said they survived a scare, I thought it was the equipment manager or the other players from getting hit with a stick or squirted with a water bottle.
He was waving that stick around a bit.
Yeah, it was like he was sword fighting. He was ready to go. But obviously Rico's a competitor and he's a good coach, and he'll get that program rolling. I think that was their shot to get a game. Mankato is just too good right now, and St. Thomas has taken this transition from the D3 level to here. That was their shot, and that's why I think he showed the frustration, because that was their chance. You only get one chance like that, and so it becomes funny internet. It becomes funny TV, and you compare it to George for sure. Can you imagine if the internet would have been around when and Twitter would have been around when George did that? I mean, that would have really blown up. I mean, I think that was a long, long time before all this. But no, Rico will get that going a little bit.
My favorite George Gwozdecki, though, was the press conference after they asked him to step down at Denver. And before he got in the elevator, he had the 2 victory signs, just like Richard Nixon getting on the helicopter in August 1974. But he will have things going there. And just to have a competitive team the first year from D3 is not an easy thing to do. Just the speed of the game, the size of the players, and just trying to pull everything together. So he really has established something there. Sounds like they'll eventually get a nice building. And
I don't think they're that far off. Coaches I've talked to said they were very competitive, and they compared it to us having to in 2 years go to the transfer portal, get a lot of young guys. They said they were competitive. They said they lost a lot of 1-goal games. Coaches were impressed with that team. I don't think it was the D3 model. I think it's just, getting to everybody play together, establish some history, establish a culture, and go. He'll get there. I mean, he you don't win as many games as Rico's won without getting there. So people have been impressed with that team. So don't write them off as just a D3 team. They were good, and their record may not show it, but they gave a lot of people fits.
By the way, can we look at the other side of that too? Did Mike Hastings maybe get to, show a lot of video of what a wake-up call looks like? You're down a goal, in I believe it was the third period maybe, or it was at least late second period on Friday night. I mean, this is the 59th team in the nation in the RPI against the number 1 team in the nation. You're down, and you've got to find a way to climb back up, win that game, and then an 8-2 win on Saturday. I mean, that shows that there was a wake-up call. And I think that sometimes, we've talked about this on this show before, that sometimes you lose a game at the right time of year. When you're in the playoffs, there's no right time to lose one. But sometimes it's nice to get a good scare in you that you can find a way to bounce back like Minnesota State did. And I think this could be at least motivating showing them that you can take a couple of periods off no matter who the opponent is the rest of the way.
Turning to Atlantic hockey, 9th seed Bentley beat a higher seed, number 8 Niagara, and Ryan Soderquist had his own George Gwozdecki moment. A goal was waved off that would have given a 3-2 win to Bentley on Friday night. It was waved off for goaltender interference, although on the video from multiple angles, you could see the hand of the Niagara player pushing the potential goal scorer, and that really fired up Bentley's coach and the team. They won in overtime and then blew out Niagara 4-1. And maybe we saw a little bit of the Bentley team we saw before the mid part of the year when things started to unravel for them. Another lower seed was in the CCHA as Northern Michigan had a 5-4 win in the third game yesterday and beat number 4 seed Lake Superior State. Those are pretty close seedings, so there's not a whole lot of difference between those two teams, but those were road teams that came away and were able to go on to the next round.
Sometimes you need a push. Sometimes you need something just to get you going in the playoffs, and especially if things aren't. The year we went to the tournament, our starting goalie went out midway through the second period, turned a puck over, gave a wide open net, dove back in the net, tore his ACL. We had to throw our backup in, who was a very good goalie, but hadn't had the opportunity, and our guys locked down. Obviously, players responded to Ryan. He got upset. He got fired up, and sometimes that's all your team needs. And they have not had a great second half, but talk about a team that's dangerous. Yeah, I would hate to be the AIC Yellow Jackets hosting them at the Olympia Ice Center because of Disney on Ice not having the Mass Mutual Center. They're going back in time, and I wouldn't be surprised. If Bentley gives them a game. They split during the year. I believe that Bentley won a shootout or an overtime in one of their wins, and AIC won the other. So it will be a competitive series. And like you said, the Lake State, Northern, not a big separation between the two. And you got rivals playing. You've a big lead, I think, in the game 3. I think Lake State had a 3-1 lead in that game, and Northern came rolling back on the road. Same thing happened in the other games with RPI and St. Lawrence. So no lead safe. And I know we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that, but rivalry games, no lead safe, man, especially playoffs.
Yeah, and you mentioned that St. Lawrence, RPI, and Northern Michigan, all in game 3, trailed 3-1. All of them came back to win. Now, what is that like when you get in that situation, maybe even into the third period, you're down by a couple of goals, the season is about to end? How do you approach that as a coach? What do you look for from the players, from the team leadership? How do you approach that situation?
You just got to go out and get momentum, and you need something to spark you. You need, whether it's a goal. Nelson Archibald from AIC did that to us way back when, and they were down 3-0 with 10 to go, and he put their team on their back. We ended up winning in overtime, but you need a spark, and you need something to get teams going. I watched the 2 ECAC games, and they got RPI got the goal to tie it. And then they got a power play after and just had Dartmouth back on their heels. And when you get a team like that back on your heels, you just get moving in the right direction. And then St. Lawrence had to get a late goal. That's a team we haven't talked a lot about this year, St. Lawrence. And they've got a lot of playoff experience. And granted, it was only 2 games last year, but they did win a championship. And they did, obviously they didn't get the NCAA tournament bid because of COVID, because of they weren't able to go, but that's a team that knows how to win right now in playoffs and a 1-game knockout. So how do you get that? How do you get that going? You need a spark. You need something to get going. Just like I talked about with Ryan, something to rally around and some emotion, and they got it.
Yeah, I want to take a step back to go back to Bentley for a second too. I always say in the playoffs that if you get a team that is good but underachieves in the regular season, oftentimes you end up with a team in the wrong seating. So you're now looking at Bentley, that was the 9 seed in the Atlantic tournament. They really were probably more like a third or a fourth place team. You shouldn't expect to have to play them in the quarterfinals like AIC will this weekend. I think the same thing's going to happen in Hockey East. Whoever gets Boston College in the quarterfinal round, assuming that they can get past New Hampshire this week, it's likely going to be number 1 Northeastern. And as the number 1 seed in the tournament, you would think, hey, we'll get somebody a little bit weaker from the bottom of the league. When teams end up underachieving, but you know that they have a ton of talent, a ton of potential, those situations in the playoffs become so deadly. And that's where you see the number 1 and number 2 seeds sometimes going down, where you just don't expect to see it. But, you get the right team in the right mode, playing good hockey. It's so dangerous in the postseason.
And the games are decided by 5-on-5 hockey, not a gimmick and not a skills competition, as one coach put it. Anyway, let's move on to the PairWise before we wrap up. We know a few things coming out of this past weekend. Ohio State really hurt itself and probably helped Hockey East. Jim, does Ohio State still have a shot? I know they're at number 15 as we record this. They got to be watching a lot of other stuff and hope all the league champions win.
Yeah, I still actually have them with a pretty decent shot of getting in. I think that it has diminished, but I would rather be in Ohio State's shoes right now than some of the other teams that are below the PairWise, knowing that they have to win a conference tournament. They don't get to play any more games. That's the situation that always stresses every coach out. And that's where the pain comes in. But at the same time, when you know what the body of work you put out there, and we've seen it. I remember, the national title that Providence won. They were sitting at home on that tournament weekend. They got eliminated in their quarterfinals. Here, that's going to be the same exact situation here for Ohio State. But when I really look at who should be where, I still think that Ohio State has just as good of a chance as maybe a team like UMass Lowell or a team like Northeastern. Maybe they've got those 2 teams have the edge. For one thing, they're ahead of them right now, but both of those teams, Northeastern and Lowell, have the chance to fall. Ohio State, their RPI really won't change much. Teams that they've played might get some wins and losses, but they'll cancel each other out and their RPI won't change too much. Teams like a Northeastern or UMass Lowell, they might end up playing a team lower in their league. You get a couple of upsets in the first round of Hockey East, and next thing you might be playing Vermont and Maine instead of playing against teams like Boston College or Providence. And next thing you know, those losses, if you were to suffer that single game loss, can bring you down. So I don't envy. Nobody wants to be in the position that Ohio State's in. They would rather be playing right now, and they'd rather control their destiny. But they didn't leave themselves out. That's the one thing we can say. And by the way, this is why we go back to, I go back to saying, when I say 99% chance of making the tournament, they're not a lock, because at one point, Ohio State was on that 99% list to make the NCAA tournament, lost 6 of their last 7 games. And now they're going to have to wait things out.
Yeah, you got, they're going to be massive. They're going to be rooting against BU, Clarkson, Providence, and Omaha. And then they're going to hope the favorites above them win. They want the teams right below them on their heels to take a dive, and they want the teams above them to win. And you can't have more than one upset, maybe, in my opinion, probably for that team, for Ohio State. But Jimmy said it. I mean, they put themselves in. You put yourselves in a tough scenario, losing 6 of your last 7. I will say this. They're going to have some time to rest and refocus, but this practices will not be fun for them. They're going to be an ornery team, knowing that they got to watch and they got to wait, and for a couple weeks. I mean, you still got 2 weekends to watch, and that's the problem they're going to have to deal with.
And they just had a week off, because after they played whenever it was Minnesota, Michigan, then they had a week off. Then they get into a playoff series. Now it's 2 weeks off. You're talking out of the final month. You're not going to play 3 of the 4 weekends, but if you do get into an NCAA tournament. So it's got to be frustrating to, the way their schedule fell. and then the way that they handled things within their schedule, it's got to feel a little bit frustrating.
And I guarantee you they're going to try to get a exhibition game next year with the development team. Whoever the team that's supposedly off that year, they're going to use this as their learning and getting educated on a 7-team schedule. But also, I wouldn't be scared if they're a 15 seed, because this is a team that's going to be really fragile going in the NCAA tournament. So if they end up a 15 seed and you're the 2 seed or 3 seed in the band that gets them, they're not going to be shaking anybody's boots, those top seeds. But they are a good team, and they do have that ability to beat them.
And we talk about the importance of early season games, not just losing 6 out of 7 down the stretch, but a loss to Bentley in October probably is I haven't done the math, but it could be worth a spot or 2 in the PairWise right now. But let's talk about some at-large teams. There are going to be 3 Eastern teams, the winners of the ECAC Hockey East and Atlantic Hockey. How many more can get in? Can the East get to 5 or 6 teams if everything falls the right way?
It's going to take a lot to get to 6. 5, possibly, and you're probably going to need teams that are outside the bubble to win Hockey East and win the ECAC. We know Atlantic is only getting their champion in no matter what. I think that if BU were to win Hockey East, Merrimack, any of those teams, though, that would probably give that league a chance to get 3 in, assuming that we're going to say that UMass is close. Again, that was another team that I think some sites had them at 99.9, some sites had them at 100%. Well, they can't be at 100% because they're no longer at 100% to get in. They're probably closer to the 95 to 98% range. I still, let's just say that they're going to get in. Then you're going to say Lowell and Northeastern probably fight it out for the second slot from Hockey East, but I do think one of those 2 teams gets it. And then the third one would probably be a team that could knock Ohio State out, be it Clarkson, be it, Harvard, be it Merrimack, UConn, any of those teams, somebody that can pull off an upset. Now, if you have 2 upsets, you're going to erase one of those Hockey East bids, either that Lowell or a Northeastern bid, unless, say Lowell wins the tournament, or Northeastern wins the tournament. I don't know. There's some complications in this one, and more complicated than I've ever seen, just because you have so many Eastern teams around the bubble. This is all East. There's nobody except Ohio State from the West anywhere near the bubble right now. It's the craziest pairwise bubble I've ever seen, in just the fact that it is so geographically biased.
Well, let's go to the last item we have on the docket for today. And it's a situation that may involve Northeastern, as improbable as the finish was for them to be the champion of Hockey East in the regular season. It's possible for them to get to 25 wins and miss the tournament. And Jim, you brought this up, the old Colorado College rule. How long has it been? 25 years? Close to that? Something like that?
I can tell you, 1994. And the reason I know that, Western Michigan University went to the NCAA tournament because of this rule, because of this. This is what sparked this rule. Colorado, and I'll let you explain it because you know it in depth. But just know there's 2 Division I head coaches that were seniors
at first
went to the NCAA tournament because Colorado College didn't. Name the other one. Name the other one. Trivia, quickly. No, not on that team. Graduated the year before.
Right.
Brent Brecky, St. Lawrence. 3 Division I head coaches, though, played. We came in at the same time as Pat, and me and Brent and Pat were all in the dorms together, all three first-year players at Western. He only had 3 years of eligibility. But go on to the Colorado College rule, but we went to the NCAA tournament because of this.
Well, what they did is then, and this was back when you had 12 teams that got in the tournament and you had 4 leagues, they made it so that the regular season champion and the conference champion would get auto bids. And if it was the same team, then there would just be one from that league. Jim posed the question, should the criteria change to make sure that somebody gets in? I think we got to, I'm going to just toss this out first, and then you guys can bat it around. I think that changes are going to make that impossible to implement, because I think we're going to see some expansion in leagues. We need to get to about 8 conferences in college hockey to have room for everybody. There's going to be some upheaval. Maybe it's going to be 5 years from now, or maybe it's a pipe dream that ever happens. But if you have 8 conferences and you have maybe 64, 65, 66 teams in D1 hockey, I don't see them expanding beyond 16 until you get quite a few more. You're going to have 8 auto bids. That's already fewer teams available for an at-large. The teams, the leagues that are used to getting a lot of teams in are not going to be happy about that. I think you'd get a lot of fight coming back from like NCHC and Big Ten and even Hockey East on doing that, because that's going to diminish their ability to get in the postseason.
A little history here. The reason it's called the Colorado College Rule is in 1994, Michigan Tech, who hadn't won a road game all year, went on the road and beat the regular season champion Colorado College. Jamie Ram stood on his head, stopped a boatload of shots. Colorado College got eliminated. They were the WCHA champion, did not get in the NCAA tournament. And that's where our Western Michigan Broncos did. We played Wisconsin in the first round. And there were 4 from the CCHA back then, and only, I believe, 1 from the WCHA. So then they made that rule the following year in 95 to where both the regular season and the playoff champion got in. So that's the history of this rule. And to be able to see Northeastern potentially on the bubble winning a regular season championship and not knowing they're 100% in the tournament is something that would be challenging. Each conference has the ability to pick how they want to determine their champion. So Hockey East and all the conferences decided they want the playoff champion. That's the rules. And everybody knows the rules going into it, just like the tiebreaker. I don't think so. I think every team, like you said, Ed, there could be a 7th conference, there could be an 8th conference. Can't have that many auto bids. So they know the rules.
Yeah, we are in a bit of a crazy situation here, though. I don't think, and I did not get to do all the research on this, I don't think outside of maybe the MAC back in the day, or maybe Atlantic Hockey, but I don't think even Atlantic Hockey, anybody has ever gotten to 24 wins and not gotten into the NCAA tournament. Am I wrong about that, Derek?
Robert Morris did.
You got to 24 and missed?
We did. Yeah, we were 24-8, and we got upset in the semifinals. We got Mercyhurst. So I could tell you that we did. And then the next year we got to 24, and we were 24-12, and we lost to RIT in the finals. So I think it's happened more than you think. I think there's a few more out there.
I don't think it's happened, but I guess I'll say I don't think it's happened in a conference outside of Atlantic Hockey or CHA. I know that we've never seen it in the old WCHA, the old CCHA. We never saw it in the Big Ten, NCHC, Hockey East, GCAC to get that high. You know, nobody's gotten to 24 and missed. That's usually been the barrel. But you know, you're going to have a team potentially in Northeastern that could get to 25 wins here, lose the Hockey East championship game. They could get to the Hockey East championship game and be in a position that they have to win it and have 25 wins on their schedule already. It's a mathematical odds are not going to be good. If they get to the Hockey East championship game, they're probably in, but still it's just one of those situations. You don't know who their opponent will be in the first round. That opponent might not really help their RPI. And then a semifinal opponent could, do the same thing. But so to think that you could have a 25 win regular season champion from a league not get in feels wrong when you're going to have a Minnesota Duluth team barely over 500 in the tournament. That I think is where you're going to have conversations. I don't think anything can change. Like we've kind of already pointed out, there's not a lot of room for change. The only thing you could do is talk about a plateau number, like a 25 win, and maybe then you have to eliminate overtime wins and turn those into ties or something. I don't know. There's so much strangeness here to it. But it does feel weird that a team might have, a 25 win season and still not make the NCAA tournament and win their conference championship, their regular season conference championship.
I want to go out on a limb here. I want to walk back something I said that maybe the number of teams wouldn't expand beyond 16. Now that there's a precedent established with the women's tournament using the same percentage as the men and having 11, if the number of men's teams increases, wouldn't that then suggest you have to go to 17 or else you have to reduce the number of women's eligible teams? Just throwing that out there.
I wouldn't be surprised someday, not too far down the road, to see, like a selection Sunday, a Tuesday play-in game somewhere, and then the regionals begin on. Then you play a Friday, Sunday regional. Very similar to what we see in basketball. I wouldn't be surprised to see an 18-team tournament, and it's not that far down the road for hockey. If you look at some of the potentials for schools of adding, and the rumors of potentially a regional league of the Division II schools moving up that I've heard a lot of buzz about, similar to what happened with the New Hire on the women's side. If you have something like that happen, you'll be in a position that I think it would be justifiable to talk about an 18-team tournament. This goes back to almost what I remember in the days of the MAC when they got the auto bid, and CHA got it, I think, the next year after that. And Jack McDonald battled so hard. He was the athletic director at Quinnipiac. He battled so hard to get the MAC and auto bid to the tournament. And the best way for him to sell it was to say, you give us the bid, I'll get you 4 more teams in the tournament. That was when the tournament expanded from 12 to 16. If you're going to come in with new conferences as a commissioner, whoever it is that does this, you might have to have some presidents and ADs saying to the NCAA, you get a couple more auto bids and we'll get the tournament expanded to 18. That, I think, is what is being looked at. And I do know that the women's tournament has to expand as well. This 11 team just doesn't work. They need 12 as well. I think that's where we're going to see the NCAA go in the near future.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, let's hope that does happen. I wouldn't mind seeing things expand. And I think you're probably right. The loss of at-large positions is not going to be liked by some of the leagues. And you do have a Power 5 conference in college hockey with a seat at the table. And I think we can wrap things up there. There's been an extensive edition of Weekend Review, which has been sponsored by DCU Digital Federal Credit Union. What will DCU mean to you? Find out today by visiting dcu.org. Membership required. For Jim Connelly, for Derek Schooley, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Weekend Review Podcast, a production of US College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.